So welcome everybody, welcome to the May meeting of the Sydney Passengers, the virtual meeting. I'd like to welcome our latest new member of the Sydney Passengers, Shona Howe from New Zealand. Also other passengers who are joining their first virtual meeting, good to see you along as well. We have passengers Joe and James from the US and Alesh and Marketa from the Czech Republic. We've got to commend them for their perseverance because it's very early morning where they are, very early morning. We also have quite a few guests today. We have Susan, Peter and Edith from Canada and Andrew and Steve from the US. So great that you could join us as well. Our presenter for this meeting is passenger Daniel Friedman. He's a prolific contributor to Sherlockian publications and a past presenter of our own virtual meetings. Daniel is joining us today from his home in New York, and it's some very interesting stuff to talk about. We are recording this meeting and will be made available to our YouTube channel when it's all been edited. So if anybody does not want to be on the recorded version, please let us know and we'll edit you out. So far, no one's taken that opportunity up, so I guess you all want to be recorded for posterity. There's a bit of news around at the moment. No firm news yet on when the new Enola Holmes movie will be uploaded, but it's still believed to be based on the Nancy Springer story, the case of the left-handed lady. So we're looking forward eagerly to that being announced and released. A bit of news about two new TV series from Warner Brothers, with Robert Downey Jr. being named as the executive producer. So I'm interested to see what they turn up with. Speaking of Mr. Downey Jr., there's a bit of speculation that he will invite Johnny Depp to join the cast of the new Sherlock Holmes movie that he and Jude Law will be making. So that'll be the third in the series for them. So it'll be interesting to see what part Johnny Depp is offered. And as always, there's perennial media speculation about a new BBC Sherlock episode. The main people are continually being quoted as saying that they'd love to make it, but it's hard getting everybody's schedules to align. As always, for our Sydney Passengers meeting, we like to look at some past anniversaries related in the canon. On the 14th of May, 1888, according to Dr. Watson, the Devon County Chronicle published a short account of the death of Sir Charles Baskerville, which led to Holmes and Watson going out to Dartmoor to investigate the spectral hound. On the 15th of May, 1901, the adventure of the Priory School commenced and was completed 3 days later. And in a week's time, on the 22nd of May, it will be Arthur Conan Doyle's birthday. So we can all wish him a very happy birthday next Saturday. What else would I mention? Oh, yes, it's my pleasure to announce the winners of our annual Montpellier Award. And for those who don't know it, or for our visitors today, the Montpellier Award is an award we present to the author or the writer of the best article in our log for the last 12 months. The log is out, the Passengers log is our journal, comes out 3 times a year. And we always have a competition where readers vote on their favourite article. And this year there were quite a strong bunch of contenders. There was the Forgotten History of Sherlock Holmes on Australian Radio by Robert Veld, where he revealed that the first full-length play that was broadcast on Australian radio in January 1925 was The Speckled Band. So quite a bit of history there. There was also an article Invoking the Devil, John Donne, Radix Pedis Diaboli and the Truth of the Cornish Horror by Mark Jones. Next article in our nominee list was Sherlock Holmes in the Sudan, 1893-1894 by Keith Suter. Next was Conan Doyle Down Under, how Stonyhurst College, Australia, and a family feud helped shape the Holmes tales by Daniel Friedman and Eugene Friedman. And last in our nominee list was When a Bullpup is Always a Canine by James C. O'Leary. So of those 5 contenders, we had quite a bunch of people voting in. It's my absolute pleasure to announce the winner by a slim margin, but still a winner, was Daniel Friedman and Eugene Friedman for their article on Conan Doyle and Stonyhurst. So congratulations to you, Daniel, and your father.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Captain Bell. Thank you, everybody.
This is the trophy that I unfortunately can't send to you because it's a bit fragile to put in the mail.
I'll just grab it. Hold on.
There you go. So that's Holmes. That's Holmes. They're leaning to the east wind. That will be engraved with your names, and I'll send you some photos of that, some close-up photos showing the detail of the trophy. And I'll hold that in your honour for the next 12 months because it's too big and too fragile to post.
Yes.
I'll mine it for you.
Thank you.
And along with that trophy, we also announced another award. We don't always announce. It's the Arthur Williams Admiral Cobber Award. This is presented to somebody who has written an article in the spirit of the late Arthur Williams, one of our famous members, favourite members, and with a strong Australian connection. And the winner for this year goes to Robert Veld for his article on Australian radio. So I'll be letting Robert know and sending him the trophy so he can proudly hold that for the next 12 months. So congratulations to Daniel, Eugene, and Robert, all worthy winners of this year's Montpellier and Admiral Cobber Awards. So on to the main part of our meeting. Joining us today is passenger Chris Sequeira from IFWG Publishing, who's got some interesting books coming out with Sherlock Holmes themes. And he's going to tell them all about it. So over to you, Chris. You're on mute, by the way, so please unmute yourself and let us know what's coming up in the wind for IFWG Publishing.
Okay, can you hear me, Bill? Fine?
Yep, I hear you well. Thank you.
Great. All right, thanks, Bill. Yeah, look, there's a few Sherlockian and Sherlockian-related publications coming out in my general sort of orbit, including in my IFWG role. And I'll just probably touch on the one by one fairly quickly. Where for a little while now, this book has been out and on sale through IFWG, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Wasnot. And these are parallel universe stories of Sherlock Holmes where his best friend, roommate and biographer is a doctor, but is not Dr. Watson. It's a bunch of mashup stories where Holmes's roommate could be Dr. Jekyll, or the gunfighter Doc Holliday, or any character from literature or history. So that book's been out for a while, but we're doing an appearance at Supernova in Sydney in, I think it's the 18th and 19th of June, the weekend closest to those dates. And we're doing some signings and also giving away a special series of art packs. There's an A3 full colour art print that goes with every story in this. A couple of the illustrations are done by good old Philip Cornell, who you would know if you're a passenger, including this great picture he did of Leslie Klinger, who wrote the introduction for the book. Phil also did a full colour picture for a story by Andrew Salmon, where Sherlock Holmes, in a universe where magic works, teams up with a magic-powered Dr. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So I guess that's a Doctor Strange of a different type, a Doctor Magician of a different type. So we'll be doing that at Sydney in Supernova. And look, that book, when it was first released a little while ago, was kind of successful for IFWG Publishing. So we've started an imprint with that, which is what we're calling the Imagine That series. And the second in the series, which comes out, and we're also going to launch it in Sydney in that a weekend in June, but it'll be available for order online anywhere around at the same time, is a Dracula-themed one for you fans of other Victoriana. It's called Dracula Unfanged. And it's got a few Sherlockian connections. So they're all stories of what if Dracula was still a terrible, timeless menace to humanity, but not because he was ever a vampire. So in one story, he might be, what if he was a modern day terrorist? And what if he was a supernatural powered being of a different sort, like an ocean god or a Lovecraftian god? And everything from the mundane to the sublime, I guess, will be sort of covered in this book. And the authors in Dracula Unfeigned, a lot of them are carryover authors, almost a family, if you like, from Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Wasnot. Passenger Phil Cornell wrote a story. Andrew Salmon, who writes a lot of Sherlockian pastiches in the United States and Canada, he's in there. Brisbane writer Brad Mingle's in there. Bram Stoker award-winning Nancy Holder is in both books as well. And again, with Dracula Unfeigned, Sherlockian and Draculiana expert extraordinaire, Leslie S. Klinger. Les has kindly done an introduction for that book as well. So that will be available around about June. And the cover for that one, if you look around on the net, I'm sure you'll find, if you Google Dracula Unfeigned, I'm sure you'll find. The cover for that one is by Dave Elsey, who Academy Award-winning makeup artist and a mate of mine. And Dave did the special effects makeup for the Gaddis and Moffat BBC Dracula a couple of years ago. So we got his Dracula cred as well as his Sherlock Holmes cred is fairly high. So that's kind of good. So that book's coming out. And I'm sure you're wondering, is there any actual Sherlockian connections in Dracula Unfeigned? Well, Brisbane writer Brad Mingle dropped a character name or two in his story, which is about Jonathan Harker, Witchfinder. Phil Cornell's story for Dracula Unfeigned is probably more of a tangent. He co-wrote it with a woman called Jacqueline Sequeira, who I have some passing acquaintance of, and other passengers may know. And it's from an idea by Phil, and it's about an alternative universe Dracula called Dracule Poirot, the brilliant European detective. Indeed, Gifford, it's a chuckle in itself. So full thanks to Phil for that idea, and he and Jackie wrote that one together, delving into their quite extensive experience with Agatha Christie pastiches. So they had some fun with that one, and there's a twist or two in the tail for that one. So that's coming out in June, Dracula Unfeigned. And the other one I would mention would be, this one's been around for a few months as well. The aforementioned Nancy Holder, Bram Stoker winner and Baker Street a regular, of great esteem, Nancy Holder. Nancy did this book with Margie Deck, and it's called Sherlock Holmes of Baking Street. And all the authors that she approached were asked to do stories that relate to cooking and culinary matters. And so there's you can get this online, but again, I'll have that at Supernova in Sydney. I've got a half dozen or a dozen copies of this that I got in. I think it sells about $50 postpaid. We'll probably have them for $30, but it's got Aussies in here like myself and Jacqueline doing a story set in Australia. It's got Australian writer Julie Dietrich has written a beautifully researched story with really excellent detail about British high society dining etiquette and customs. And Australian writer Jan Scherpenhausen wrote a clever little story about the invention of the fortune cookie. So that's by two great Sherlockian editors extraordinaire. And again, an intro by the always very generous with his time, Leslie Klinger. And the cover on that one is by Australian Jan Scherpenhausen. So yeah, that's a pretty cool one as well. And other than that, my other Sherlockian news, satellite news, Bill, would be myself and a Melbourne-based artist named Christian Rue, comic book artist. We've signed with a company called Outland Entertainment, which you can Google them as well. We're doing a Sherlock Holmes themed graphic novel for them that'll come out in parts later on in the year. And I can't say much about it until they let me say stuff about it, but it'll be I guess you could say it'll be a science fictional tangent on Sherlock Holmes. So yeah, so there's plenty of stuff going around. Sherlock Holmes seems to be popular with in all shapes and sizes as per usual, Bill.
Thank you, Chris. Always interesting to hear from you. And as you say, Sherlock Holmes is forever popular amongst the authors and publishers. That's great. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce you to Daniel. Daniel, you're unmuted, so you can unmute yourself and you can take over the screen and show us your presentation. You've got some interesting stuff to tell us.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me back. It's truly an honor, and what a way to start off my my midnight or the afternoon with you, taking home the Montpellier Award. That is one of the highlights of my career, both in my real life and in this Sherlockian life. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Friedman, and I'm a contributing writer to many Sherlockian journals and magazines throughout the world, as well as the author of The Strange Case of Dr. Doyle. Like all of you, I'm an enthusiastic fan of the Holmes stories, as well as the life of their author, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But the first part of my presentation does not focus on Doyle nor on Holmes. Instead, it centers around the man who saved Sherlock Holmes and the nation of Japan. Sherlock Holmes is the perfect example of genetic engineering going according to plan. His DNA is meticulously spliced together from that of 6 Edinburgh physicians: Joseph Bell, William Rutherford, Thomas Richard Fraser, Alexander Crumb Brown, Henry Duncan Littlejohn, and the man, the myth, the legend, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Holmes's most recognizable and remarkable traits and talents: his intelligence, strength, athleticism, and acting prowess, his knowledge of belladonna alkaloids, snake venoms, tobacco ash, anatomy, chemistry, toxicology, forensic science, and British law, and most of all, his amazing powers of observation and intuition are derived from them. Nevertheless, there were times when Conan Doyle was forced to modify his master detective so he could adapt to new and sometimes potentially deadly situations. Conan Doyle was fortunate enough to have an exceptional network of friends he could turn to when Sherlock was in trouble, men who could supply him with fragments of their own exceptional genetic material so he could then inject them into Holmes's chromosomes, even if they resided in faraway places. When Conan Doyle introduces us to Sherlock Holmes in A Study in Scarlet, Watson quickly determines and then enumerates that Holmes is an expert single-stick player, boxer, and swordsman. And while these fighting skills might have enabled Holmes to successfully defend himself against many formidable adversaries throughout the canon, they were of little use to him when it came to facing off in a battle to the death against Professor Moriarty at the Great Fall of Reichenbach. In the final problem, Watson sadly laments how his partner had been thrown to his death from off a high cliff. And for those of you who are unaware of this, Doyle had no intention of turning this into one of Thomas Hardy's cliffhanger stories. Just the opposite. He was determined to kill Holmes off once and for all, which in turn would free him to write more scholarly and serious works. But in The Adventure of the Empty House, Holmes miraculously returns from the dead, telling Watson that he had never actually plunged into the watery abyss. Instead, he had been able to defeat Moriarty that very day because of his knowledge of, and I quote, Baritsu, or the Japanese system of wrestling. It was this form of martial arts that provided Holmes with the edge he so desperately needed to slip out from the evil mathematician's grip and live to see another day. But the English translation for the Japanese system of wrestling is not Baritsu. That word is the more familiar sumo. Could Conan Doyle have erred here? Or did the term Baritsu hold a poignant secret meaning to him? might he have been paying homage to a recently departed best friend? By exploring Doyle's past, while simultaneously taking a closer look at the canon, the answers stand before us. The first clue as to the etymology of Baritsu is present in the illustrious client. It is found in the section where Holmes hands Watson a visiting card with the name Dr. Hill Barton imprinted on it, and then informs his partner that he will need to act out the part of a collector of highly valuable Oriental pottery. Watson's alias, Dr. Hill Barton, is actually a play on the name Dr. John Hill Burton, an influential and revered family friend of the Doyles. The real Dr. Hill Burton was a prominent advocate lawyer who was appointed historiographer royal for Scotland. Dr. Burton also enjoyed a reputation as being, and I quote, an indefatigable pedestrian thinking nothing of a walk of 50 or even 60 miles in a day over any tract of country and in any kind of weather. Surely, Holmes's long journey that commenced with his feigned death at Reichenbach would have borne resemblance to one of Burton's many arduous hikes. So let's go ahead and add a seventh doctor to Holmes's remarkable genetic code. And in 1866, Fukuzawa Yakuchi, one of the architects of modern-day Japan, translated Hill Burton's Political and Social Economy for Use in Schools into Japanese. That book went on to become a bestseller and helped convince the then feudalistic and isolationist nation to open up its borders to free trade and diplomatic relations with the Western world. The Burton family had other strong ties to the East. John Hill Burton's youngest son, Cosmo Innes Burton, emigrated to China in 1890 after having received an appointment as the first professor of chemistry at the Polytechnic Institution of Shanghai. Sadly, just after he prepared his initial course syllabus and assembled a laboratory dedicated to metallurgy, mining, and mineralogy, he succumbed to the complications of malignant smallpox at the age of 28. John Hill Burton's elder son, William Kinnaman Burton, was Conan Doyle's beloved childhood friend. But unlike the ill-fated Cosmo, William would go on to have an impressive career. After a 5-year apprenticeship at the prestigious Brown Brothers and Company's Rosebank Ironworks in his home city of Edinburgh, William moved to London and joined his uncle Cosmo Innes's engineering firm to design a water filtration system for the cholera-plagued city. William, who had expertise in the emerging field of modern photography, managed to find time to author the textbooks, The ABCs of Modern Photography, The Manual of Photography, Modern Photography, and The Processes of Pure Photography. William Burton and Conan Doyle were both frequent contributors to the British Journal of Photography, and there were many occasions when Doyle came to the defense of some of his friends' more controversial research. It is only fitting that Conan Doyle's third Holmes tale, A Scandal in Bohemia, would center around a telltale cabinet photograph. While Doyle was writing A Study in Scarlet, William was leaving for Japan to supervise an engineering project that was slated for completion within a year's time. Once there, Burton immediately fell in love with Japan and its people, learned its language and customs, and decided to move there permanently. Even though a foreigner, he soon caught the attention of Japan's most accomplished academics and was named the first professor of sanitary engineering and lecturer in rivers, docks, and harbors at the prestigious Imperial University of Tokyo. His expertise in irrigation and water filtration made him the government's top choice to design a new water and sewage system for Tokyo and its surrounding towns. The success of this project put an end to the cholera epidemic that had plagued his adopted land for decades. At the same time, he designed Japan's first skyscraper, equipped with Japan's first electric elevator, the octagonal 12-story Ryukaku building. Unfortunately, the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 created irreparable structural damage that would necessitate this landmark's demolition. William Burton also worked with British geologist John Milne in photographing the country's many volcanoes, and also studied and photographed the destruction that followed in the wake of the 1891 Mino-Orari earthquake, the largest inland earthquake ever recorded in the Japanese archipelago. Now, while all of these achievements are impressive in their own right, Sherlock Holmes would surely have regarded Burton's historical and descriptive account of wrestlers and wrestling in Japan as being the most significant one of them all. It was this book that introduced the Western world to the ancient art of sumo. Found within its pages were photographs of its most celebrated practitioners demonstrating the proper techniques required for competition. Sumo, which is officially the Japanese system of wrestling, was regaining popularity during the Meiji era. It is also the exact fighting system Holmes tells Watson he drew upon when he battled Moriarty in Switzerland. But Holmes didn't rely solely on the principles of sumo wrestling that fateful day in May of 1891. He also utilized the techniques of another Japanese martial art, jiu-jitsu, which centers on using the attacker's energy against him. It were these two ancient Japanese fighting styles that Holmes adopted during his death match with Moriarty. So how are these little tidbits related to one another? Before that question can be answered, we must address the popular misconception that Holmes was skilled in Bartitsu, spelled with two T's. First, Bartitsu is a totally English, not Japanese martial art form that was developed in the year 1898. As Holmes's death occurred in 1891, and he had personally stated to be proficient in this discipline for several years, there is no possibility whatsoever that Sherlock Holmes defended himself using a fighting style that didn't as yet exist. Additionally, Bartitsu is mainly a combination of boxing and cane fighting and is not based on the elements of Japanese wrestling. And so, the most likely origin of Sherlock's Bartitsu, as opposed to Bartitsu, is that Conan Doyle substituted the U in Burton for an A, as he did in The Illustrious Client, to make the name Barton, and then replace the first three letters of the word jiu-jitsu with the bar of Barton, yielding the heretofore unknown and totally fictitious martial art Baritsu. Since William Burton wrote the book Wrestlers and Wrestling in Japan, and Holmes was only able to survive the Battle of Reichenbach Fall because of his knowledge of Baritsu, it follows that William Burton was indirectly responsible and also secretly acknowledged for saving Holmes from a premature death. And this was not the only time a member of the Burton family indirectly assisted Holmes with one of his more difficult assignments. In A Scandal in Bohemia, Holmes is commissioned to retrieve a cabinet photograph from the American-born soprano Irene Adler. Although he knows it is hidden somewhere in her bijou villa, he doesn't know its exact location. Sherlock devises a scheme aimed at tricking Irene into revealing its secret chamber, a scheme which depended upon Watson launching, and I quote, a plumber's smoke rocket fitted with a cap at either end to make it self-lighting into Miss Adler's apartment. And his plan worked. But how does this relate to the Burton family? This model sewer rocket contained gunpowder, a design that owes its genesis to Cosmo Innes, William Burton's uncle and mentor. A rocket of this type would have emitted smoke instead of a volatile liquid for up to 10 minutes to detect defects in sewer pipes. Holmes's smoke bomb was refitted to clear out a room, and if it hadn't been for Cosmo Innes's ingenuity, Sherlock would never have learned the whereabouts of Irene Adler's compromising photograph. And when Conan Doyle needed technical information regarding the complexities of hydraulic presses for the engineer's thumb, he knew exactly who to turn to for advice, his best friend, William Burton. Doyle would pay secret tribute to William in that story by disguising Burton's name in the form of the Mad Colonel War Burton. Conan Doyle officially acknowledged William Burton in his non-Holmes tale, The Firm of Girdlestone, writing, "To my old friend, Professor William K. Burton of the Imperial University, Tokyo, who first encouraged me years ago to proceed with this little story, I desire affectionately to dedicate it." Sadly, William K. Burden developed acute inflammation of the liver secondary to dysentery he contracted while working in Taiwan and died prematurely on August 5th, 1899, in his adopted city of Tokyo at the age of 43. It didn't take long before the grateful nation of Japan acknowledged him as one of their national treasures. The water purification sand filtering system he engineered remains fully operational in Shimonoseki after more than a century. And the labels on the water bottles produced and sold by this facility at one time graced William Burden's portrait. And there are dozens of Burden-designed water filtration systems found throughout Japan, including plants based in Tokyo, Nagasaki, Osaka, Okayama, Kobe, and Hiroshima. Today, the members of the Engineering Society of Japan pay an annual visit to William Burden's gravesite to honor his enduring contributions to the health and welfare of his adopted land. Isn't it ironic that it was William Burden who was responsible for saving homes from drowning in water, while also preventing the people of Japan from dying by drinking contaminated water? And so I propose a toast to William K. Burden, the man who saved Sherlock Holmes, and the citizens of Japan.
William K. Burton.
To William K. Burden.
Thank you, Daniel. Intriguing stuff.
Thank you, Captain Bill.
We'll now throw the floor open to questions. Anybody's got some questions for Daniel, please unmute yourself and throw your ideas into the mix.
No, not so much a question as a thank you, Daniel. That is just a fantastic paper touching on quite a few things that I had never come across in my years of reading Sherlockiana and Doyleana. And that is, I think, the quintessential lifting the lid on Baritsu. I don't think anyone can challenge you after that. I think you've laid the matter to rest beautifully.
I appreciate you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel. That's certainly got us all thinking, and let's kill the idea of Baritsu once and for all, I think. Yes. Which is slightly unfortunate because I always like the name Baritsu. So there you go. We can play around with that as much as we like.
Now, Bill, maybe there'll be an argument or a paper somewhere somehow where there's a particular Sherlock Holmes school of sumo jiu-jitsu that he named Baritsu. Perhaps that's what's going on.
Yeah.
In an alternate universe, Chris, that I would like to see. I would like to see that.
Good stuff. Well, thank you. You got us all thinking now, Daniel. That's great.
Thank you.
And as Chris,
well, I have another one that's going to be more of an asking people questions. So the next part of my talk attempts to actually solve the mystery of which university Sherlock Holmes attended.
Another one of those conundrums that has bedeviled Sherlockians for years. That's right. So
yeah, was it Cambridge? Was it Oxford? Was it University of Edinburgh? Heriot? Watts? There's a lot of choices. But if we could, let's just take a quick poll, if we can. Let's see if I can do this over here. Who among you believes that Holmes went to Cambridge? On my end, I don't really see that many hands, but that's okay. And how about Oxford?
Yeah, I think Oxford. Oxford's always good.
Okay. And is there anybody under the impression that Holmes attended another school, like say the University of London or Glasgow, or even Conan Doyle's own alma mater, the University of Edinburgh? I see Chris. I think Chris wants to go for another one.
Look, I always liked that reference in the canon to Camford University. I think it's in relation. It's in association with Moriarty, and I've always wondered whether that's a third, rather than being a deliberate, combination of Oxford and Cambridge, whether it's a trick to conceal the name of a third university. And I've always wondered, did Holmes go to the same university that Moriarty did? And so I like the idea that there's a name hidden behind Camford that's not Cambridge or Oxford.
Okay, I love that. I love that answer too. Well, Is there any proof in the canon that can help us once and for all put an end to this debate? There is, in fact, and it was Holmes himself who scattered these clues throughout the canon for us to find. The first piece required in solving this jigsaw puzzle is found in the Lion's Mane, which just so happens to be one of the two adventures that Holmes chronicles by himself from start to finish. Does anyone know what the other self-narrated Holmes tale is?
Blind Soldier.
Correct, The Blind Soldier is correct. In The Lion's Mane, we are told by Holmes that Dr. Watson has become an infrequent visitor to his Sussex estate near Fulworth. But the 53-year-old retired consulting detective still retains his trusty old housekeeper and has exchanged detective work for studying the habits of bees. A half-mile away is the Gables, a, quote, well-known coaching establishment run by Harold Stackhurst. Strangely, the usually aloof Holmes is quite aware that his neighbor had been, quote, a well-known rowing blue in his day and an excellent all-round scholar. He then waxes on with, he and I were always friendly from the day I came to the coast, and he was the one man who was on such terms with me that we could drop in on each other in the evenings without an invitation. Holmes knows of the man's fine reputation as an oarsman, but rather than designating him as an alumnus of a specific university, he chooses only to identify him as a blue. Holmes, who was rather reluctant to heap praise on others, must have been mighty impressed by something he had witnessed or been privy to about Stackhurst in years past. It follows that the two were near contemporaries. Holmes's immediate, from day one, social attachment to Harold would most likely have stemmed from them having attended the same university. But which university was it? Rowing was an important varsity sport at the intellectual citadels of both Oxford and Cambridge. Indeed, these two schools have been vying for supremacy on the River Thames dating back to 1829 when Charles Merivale suggested the sporting matchup. Holmes tells us that he and Stackhurst were kindred spirits from the very first day he arrived at Fulworth and shared a casual drop-in relationship. Holmes's personality would never have permitted any relationship like this one unless there was a brotherly element to it. Such a bond must have been fostered by both men having gathered around the altar of the same alma mater. The campus they shared, the fields they walked, shielded both of them from sorrow and pain, and was a place where they felt most secure. Yes, Holmes and Stackhurst were firmly united in blue, staunch and true alumni to their common university. A connection like this could only have existed if the relationship between the two of them had been imbued in unbridled trust. Now, I am sure that some of you are under the impression that Holmes would have known about Stackhurst's reputation as a rower and all-around scholar, either by reading the sports section of a newspaper or by engaging in friendly conversation. But that doesn't match the material contained within the canon. Proof against such a theory is found in The Adventure of the Missing Three-Quarter, where Holmes offers a confession to Watson that while his knowledge and interests stretch out into many sections of society, it is never applicable to amateur sport. And so Holmes's reference to Stackhurst having been a rowing blue was not derived from his name appearing in print in the sports section of a newspaper, but rather from having been a loyal son of the same university Holmes had once attended. Some difficulty arises from Holmes's assertion that Stackhurst was a blue. He fails to mention its hue, light or dark. Dark blue are Oxonians, and while light blues are Cantabs. At this juncture, all we can presume is that Holmes had been a student at one of these two colleges, but no other. But Holmes does provide us with two other clues that help us identify his true alma mater. And of all things, these clues are found in a Sherlock Holmes adventure with a direct connection to Australia, the Gloria Scott. It was this case that launched Holmes's profession as a consulting detective. Holmes begins his account of his first venture into detective work by revealing to Watson the name of the only friend he had made during the 2 years of college, one Victor Trevor. After Holmes had been accidentally attacked by Victor's bull terrier as he was making his way down to chapel, Victor and Sherlock soon become close friends. In fact, Victor Trevor's drop-in relationship with Holmes is similar to Stackhurst's relationship with Sherlock 30 or so years later. It isn't long before Victor invites Holmes to spend the long vacation up north in Donenthorpe near Norfolk. This statement gives us the piece of information we need in order to decipher the mystery of Holmes's education. While it is a fact that both Oxford and Cambridge had long vacations, the dates and duration of those vacations did not correspond to one another. Before I continue, I must inform you that it is widely held that Holmes was born in the year 1854 and would have been a student at either Cambridge or Oxford sometime between the years 1867 and 1874. If Holmes had been 13, 3 to 4 years younger than the average student of his day, he would have matriculated in 1867, and his first long vacation would have taken place in the year 1868. If Holmes had been an old 19-year-old freshman student, the year of his first long vacation would have taken place in 1874. Based on this information, I have limited my analysis of Holmes's summer vacation from university to the years 1868 to 1874. The long vacation that Holmes would have been referring to if he had attended the University of Cambridge would have begun on the Saturday after commencement day, which I have listed for you on my slides, and it would have always ended on September 30th. At the University of Oxford, Holmes's long vacation would have occurred during the time interval between the Trinity and Michaelmas semesters, and I have included those dates on this slide. As you can see, the Michaelmas term always began on October 10th, with one exception taking place in 1869 when it occurred on the 11th. The reason behind Cambridge's abridged long vacation was that, unlike Oxford, their students were given time off in early November to recharge themselves. It is this November holiday which resulted in Cambridge students reporting back to school a full 10 days earlier than Oxford's. So how does this information help us decide which school Holmes attended? By itself, it doesn't. But Holmes then gives us another piece to solving this perplexing puzzle when he tells us that after spending a few days with Victor, he returned to his, quote, London rooms, where I spent 7 weeks working out a few experiments in organic chemistry. Holmes then follows up by providing us with this crucial piece of information. One day, however, when the autumn was far advanced and the vacation drawing to a close, I received a telegram from my friend imploring me to return to Donenthorpe and saying that he was in great need of my advice and assistance. Of course, I dropped everything to set out for the north once more. When he arrived, Holmes saw at a glance that the last 2 months had been very trying ones for his friend Victor. That more than 2 full months elapsed between Holmes's visits, and that autumn, which begins on approximately September 21st, was referred to him as being far advanced, and for all intents and purposes, we should assume that more than a full 2 weeks had elapsed, and that Holmes even had time to spare to journey back north to lend assistance to his friend in need before classes commenced, implies that the university Holmes studied at did not resume classes until mid-October and definitely did not resume classes on the last day of September, that being Cambridge's start date. Now we can be sure that Holmes had been a student of the dark blue of Oxford and not the light blue of Cambridge. There are 2 more clues that lend strength to this theory. The first one is given to us when Holmes tells us that his, quote, line of study was distinct from that of the other fellows. Only Cambridge allowed its students a choice of subjects in a wide variety of disciplines, while Oxford was more restricted and required their students to enroll in classes. They were called a line, dedicated to one primary field. Holmes, who was proficient in so many diverse spheres, including botany, history, English, chemistry, British law, anatomy, medicine, forensic science, politics, and geology. He was everywhere, every class, would have enjoyed the Cambridge curriculum. But instead, Holmes tells us that his line of study, and he uses the word line, his line of study was unlike that of any other student at the school. This statement is strongly suggestive that Holmes had matriculated at Oxford, a university that required its students to declare a specific field of study and college. The next clue is provided to us when Holmes tells us of the attack that occurred on him by Victor Trevor's dog as he walked to the chapel. Although the reader might assume that Holmes was a theology student, that is not at all the case. All Oxford University's Balliol, New College, Trinity, and Merton colleges students were obligated to attend chapel 4 or 5 times a week, depending on their program. Again, this strengthens the argument that Holmes wore the dark blue of Oxford and not the light blue of Cambridge. Although the stories that make up the canon fail to spell out which university Holmes had attended, the incidents he talks about point to only one, the University of Oxford. Holmes was an iconoclast who took a multidisciplinary course load when he wasn't supposed to, and yet he had the intelligence to pull it off. He took advantage of a long vacation that stretched into the mid-autumn season, where he conducted organic chemistry experiments and developed a heretofore non-existent career for himself, that of the world's only consulting detective. Holmes wore the dark blue jacket of the Axonians.
Daniel, you killed it again. That's fantastic research.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you for attending and listening to me and giving me the floor, or the Zoom floor. If anybody has any questions they want to ask.
Look, I loved it, just like your earlier presentation today. I thought it was fantastic. But you have raised in my mind possibly another theory that's completely consistent with your theory, and that is, but when you put that slide up that Holmes might have been so advanced he might have commenced university at 14, what if he went to Cambridge first, did a course of study, and then went on to Oxford and did a course of study there? He might even have become frustrated with structured courses and tried to shape a different set of outcomes second time around, and still, been unable to quite squeeze out a distinct sort of program of studies that worked for him. But just that slide where you said he could have started at 14, I thought, no, that'd be interesting. What if he actually went to both?
He would only be, your theory would hold, but he would have to have either only done 1 or 2 semesters out of the 4 that they gave, because remember, he knew Victor before the vacation, and then they both shared the same vacation at the end. So he would have to have ended and began that summer into fall term at the same schools.
Okay.
Yeah, but if he, there's nothing to say that he couldn't have started off at Cambridge maybe for 1 or 2 semesters in the 3rd and 4th up until the long vacation. He transferred out. I mean, there's nothing to stop that. It's just that on the bridge between those 2 intervals, I would have to say he went to only 1, and the way that he's depicted would have gone with Oxford. One thing I did notice, and I didn't bring up my slides, is that a story that was written about a year before the Gloria Scott came out was lot number 249. And that story itself takes place in Oxford too. And the descriptions that Doyle gives of I think you remember the spiral staircase and the water coming down. It sounds like he had Oxford on his mind. I didn't want to put this into this topic because it's outside of the canon, but I could see where his mind was at that one junction when he was writing. He was at the British Library doing his research for lot number 249, and then of course he has the story come out, and the imagery he was giving, it sounded more like he was fascinated with the Oxford style of life.
Well, I'm kind of thinking along with Chris. Am I being heard?
I hear you, Margaret. Sure.
Hey, Margaret, you're
Well,
on.
I was thinking too, the way Chris was thinking, that where you outlined the Cambridge curriculum and then Oxford specialising, it may be that he went to Cambridge first because it had the spread and he decided that temperamentally it didn't suit him, because there is the idea he didn't want to take on a lot of stuff which he felt was pointless. So it may have, I think there's a possibility that starting off at Cambridge would give him a very, a smorgasbord to see whether smorgasbord suits or not. He decided it didn't, or it cleared up his mind what he really wanted to do. So I'm kind of with Chris there, because there is the idea that he somehow studied all those things, and he certainly could have done them on his own, but it does tie in with the way you mentioned the Cambridge curriculum. And there's, I'm not sure of the English system, but here you do undergraduate and you can, if you like, matriculate or take your degree at the end of that undergraduate, but usually you do the 4 years. And so there is that kind of leeway that Cambridge can be moved over, in which case Oxford would be where he made the most progress. So it'd be a bit like going to a school that didn't suit you, forget about it and move on.
You've definitely given a really solid justification there. So again, you know, I think we have to all get in line and give you a big thumbs up and a big thanks, because, you know, and I like your theory because you can build out from it, but your central stuff is rock solid.
Thank you, Chris.
Ties in with my education. That's why I think you do work out whether something suits you or not, and then you go specialising, looking for what it is you really want, and you don't remember the stuff. You know, I can't remember my undergraduate, and I've got 5 degrees, so I can't remember what I did in first year, because they make you do so many different things. But by second year, you're specialising.
I've got the same problem, Margaret, but mine was because I don't think I spent any of my university years sober.
Naughty. I had no choice. 2 children. Well, I did break out. Yeah, so I know it may be that's also a cultural thing, because I don't know the American system. We do tend to follow the English system, but we certainly don't have the tutorial style of system that they have in Oxford, which is supported by that particularising. So I'm not really sure. It's just, yeah. Just
remember, Margaret, just remember that, but just keep in mind that Holmes did tell you that he only spent 2 years in college, that he only, remember, he said he only does 2, and that he mentions that he knew Victor at the end of his first year of college.
Yeah.
And then he re-met up with him again at the end of the start of his second year. So that the blocks, the bookends have to match up. That the schools that he ended the term with, the commencement term, has to add up to the Michaelmas term. That those two have to be the same school.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I
Yes.
feel that there was this prior study, and it's likely to have been at Cambridge, and so whether it was 1 or 2 years that he was at Cambridge, which he might call college, I don't know, but that may have been a function of the system at the time that you do high school. Here now, for example, well, in Australia, but also in the UK, they have this special year that you do. It's almost like a gap year, not going to Europe, but you do your studies in order to get into university. So you pick up all sorts of things. So I'm just wondering if, I don't know, just throwing it into the mix, that's all. I think it's great what you've done. It's very tidy.
Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that.
It is very tidy. So it's just, I wondered about that generalization, how just that idea of someone that had so many interests would possibly be drawn to a curriculum that provided it. But then he's such a loner and a one-off that it didn't suit. So anyway, just
Yeah.
throwing
And,
it
then,
in.
and he even confesses that his line of study was different than all the other students. Like he
Yeah.
even brings it up. He says, I was unlike them. They were, I took all these things and they only did one.
Yeah.
You know, he was more like the pigeonhole. I only did this. They did this. I did all of this.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I think it's very neat what you've done. I really do. It's just like with Chris too. I think maybe because of our system here, it just makes you ask other questions. That's all.
Daniel, if you finish your slideshow, can you close your slide screen down? We can...
Sure, I will. Yes, I will do it right here. Absolutely.
Great. All right.
Just a quick question, Daniel. Whereabouts in the United States are you?
I am in Long Island, New York.
Cool. Well, look.
So for me, it's about 1 a.m. here.
Yep. I'm hoping to get over there in July, but I won't know for a couple of weeks whether I'm going in July. And if I do, I'm hoping to go to the East Coast as well as the West. So if I do, I might beg on Bill to borrow the trophy. Maybe we could meet up for a coffee and at least get a photograph of you holding it or something before I take it back in case it's got to go into circulation again. But I won't know till the end of this month if I'm going.
Oh my God, that's amazing. I appreciate you so much, Chris.
That's right. And look, the other passenger who goes to the States, particularly in New York a lot, is Roseanne McNamara, Bill. I mean, she might think she's just coming back from it.
She's just been in New York. She's over in England now. Yeah.
So, you know, we might be able to get a photo of you actually touching the award, Daniel.
I almost touched it through the screen. I was here. I was so close.
Great. Well, thank you.
And I thank you all for that. That was like that. As I said, that's a highlight of my career. I mean, professional and Sherlockian. That was it.
All right, Daniel. You also get a small personal prize, which has been posted to you. So that should arrive very shortly, I hope. So you'll get that to keep. There's more little prizes for you.
Daniel, I just thought I might mention, if I've got just a second, Bill,
Yes,
this is the book by Barton Wright. Hoping, Daniel, that you'll be able to write a similar book. It's got interesting chapters like how to deal with undesirables when ladies are present. It's really good.
I love that. That's great.
It's got great illustrations.
Oh my God!
And
those are authentic.
Yeah,
those are authentic. That's those are old. Those are not new.
We're looking forward to your perhaps a slight twist in the tale here. Perhaps a book.
Oh, I will definitely going to get my hands on that.
While we're holding books up, I must show I'm enjoying the current issue of Sherlock magazine. Quite good.
Oh,
This
that's great. Thank you.
The Cape Crusader issue. So it's quite interesting articles in that. Everybody else reading anything interesting at the moment? Oh, well, must be watching TV instead. Lee, you always got something to show us. You there? You're on mute, Lee. Unmute yourself.
With myself. I managed to do it. I've got a couple of things. I've actually acquired quite a bit of Sherlockiana in the last couple of months or so. So I've got a few things to show, but I've only brought a selection. This little one I got called the Sherlock Holmes Handbook. It's a bit basic, but it's by a guy called Branson Briggs, and it claims to be the methods and mysteries of the world's greatest detectives. It's published by Quirk Books of Philadelphia in 2009, and it's just a little handbook on, you know, how to do things like how to survive a plunge over a waterfall, you know, from the point of view of Sherlock Holmes, various sorts of guns, how to locate a secret chamber, how to stage a dramatic entrance, etc. It's a bit of fun. Another thing I acquired recently was a complete set of the Kel Richards Sherlock Holmes children's books.
Yep.
which of course Philip Cornell of the Passengers did the illustrations for the covers for. Sorry, I'm going in and out of the background here.
They're just appearing a bit.
I'm disappearing. Hang on, I'll just hold up one of them. And I expect that a lot of the Passengers would know about these from the past. I knew of them, but it took me quite a while to track them down. And in my ignorance, I didn't know that Philip Cornell back in the day had done the covers for these. But I got the set of 3 for $75, which was quite a good price, because I've seen individual copies of these books go for quite a bit more than $25 a pop. So I was happy to get those.
And Lee, on the covers of those, I think Dr. Watson is modelled on Kel Richards by Phil.
Yes, I think that's right. There's hang on. He's shown there with a bowler hat and glasses and a sort of moustache and beard, and it looks like Kel Richards himself.
The bell, Chris, right? You're right. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to reading those, but I'll get Phil Cornell to sign those when I see him next. Can I extend to 2 more books? Is that all right?
Yeah, keep going.
People might know this one. I'm never sure if I'm sort of boring people by showing these, because everyone might have them, but Sherlock Holmes Companion by Christopher Redmond. I must get rid of this background next time.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Sorry. We'll go back. This is from Cambridge University Press, The Sherlock Holmes Companion by Christopher Redmond. It's the 2nd edition. Sorry, it's not Cambridge, it's Dunburn Publishers. And the 2nd edition came out in 2009. This is excellent. I heartily recommend this to any Holmesian. It's like a complete overview about Holmes in all manifestations. It's a really good reference.
Yeah, I can second that. It's a great book.
Yeah, so I've been getting stuck into that one. And I bought this one secondhand, just off Marketplace, off Facebook. This great big thick Otto Penzler edited anthology called Sherlock. Over 80 stories starring the greatest detective of all time. So that's a whopping great anthology of Holmes stories called Sherlock, edited by Otto Penzler. Hours of reading, I'm sure, in that one. I haven't even started that one yet.
I have, and it's really good. There you go.
Thanks, Lee. That was great. Always good to see some new books or find some old books that you're looking for a while.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything to show us? Or Steve, what about your autograph collection? Steve, added any more to it lately? Steve Mason, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Okay. I was wondering whether you added any more autographs to your collection.
Oh, yeah, I'm averaging about 8 per week. Nothing as earth-shattering as William Gillette or anything, but some minor actors. So we went to 2 plays in the last 2 weeks, and I got autographs from the actors playing on stage. So that was nice. Good.
Fantastic. That's a good collection you've got there.
Speaking of which, Bill, after this meeting, Jackie and I are going off to the Sherlockian improv
at the Factory Theatre. Yes.
Yep.
So
they only did 2 performances this time, yesterday and today, but they've been very good in the past.
Yeah, they're a good bunch of actors, a good troupe, that one.
Chris, any chance I can talk you into getting an autograph for me of the guy, whoever's playing Sherlock?
Oh, I'll do my best, mate. I'll do my best.
That would be great.
I know one of them. I know John Williams. Of all strange things, his brother video recorded my wedding. So all strange things.
I'll put my address in the chat for you real quick.
Yeah,
If I get it, I'll put it aside. And if I have any trouble figuring out how to get to you, Steve, I'll make sure I connect with Bill and get your address from him.
Okay.
Yep, no problem. All right. I think that's pretty much it for the day. Thanks everybody for joining. Unless anybody's got anything else to report to us or show us, we might call it a day. Just over an hour and 10 minutes or so, which is a good presentation. Thank you again to Daniel, and thank you to Doug Elliott, who's doing the recording and editing of this, which we'll be putting up on our YouTube channel sometime next week, probably. So great to see you all, and thanks for joining us. And we'll catch you again next time. Bye for now.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Ciao.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
evening, everybody.